I want to step back and talk about Amethyst and kind of rewind the last month because right now I just looked on the Google Play Store and it just lists, I think, really rough metrics. It listed more than 50,000 downloads of Amethyst. I don't know if that number is accurate today or not, but I want to step back to day one and talk about how you first got this off the ground. What was your strategy when you first decided I'm going to build Amethyst day one? How do you get users? How do you decide what to work on, what to build, what not to build? I'd love to hear your kind of backstory there.
I decided to build the app when I realized that 10 or 20 days before that moment, I had bought an iPhone just to use demos. So it was
Hmm.
like that was the only app in that phone that I was using. And the only purpose to buy the phone was to be able to interact with the ecosystem. And I'm an extremely practical person. So if I have to buy a phone to use and interact with people, I will do it. But then it quickly hit me that, maybe we should just build an app that works on the phones I'm using, which is Android. And we started thinking on actually building one. And when you start, a new project like this, you're always scared of the size, right? Rebuilding something like Twitter feels like a huge undertaking for just one person to do it by itself. But frankly, it wasn't. And the interesting part that I learned for the past week or so, it's on how much easier it is to build an app today than what it was like 10 years ago. I'm an Android developer for 12 years now. I started in Android 1.5. Um, so at the time, back then, one app like this will take 2 years to be developed. These days, components are there. You can just reuse what other people have been doing. Google has excellent tools, so it's very easy to just kickstart. And we were able to we started on January 5, and we shipped the app, the first version, on the 10th of that month. That version already had a full Twitter interface, full, likability, reply and retweet. So it was a functional Twitter clone. Um, and from that forward, we started adding more features. So public chats and messages came in later. Notifications with or group notifications where it's just not just the post one after the another, which is a very annoying way to do notifications, came after that. And more recently, auto translations, zaps, and everything else that we are building into. All of them in a span of 45 days or so since January 5 to today. Um, when the app hit the Play Store, then we went from maybe 1,000 users downloading the APK file and side loading to their phones to up to 30,000 and then 50,000 users almost immediately on day one. Um, Together with Demos, by the way. When Demos hit the store, we were already there as well. So it kind of both apps, um, gave each other space to grow because, of course, if you are your phone choice is not really a choice. Right? You either have an iPhone or you will have an Android phone. You can't swap back and forth. So if you we were mentioning before, we were talking before of competition. Like I don't see demos as a competition as much as I see as a collaboration, because I know that whoever has an iPhone today will have an iPhone tomorrow, and whoever has an Android phone today will have an Android phone tomorrow. So they compete, but they also don't compete. They more like collaborate to just try to bring the best experience. And since most of the protocol, remember, Nostr is just a way to transmit messages back and forth. Client apps actually need to make sense of the information that is going back and forth to the user. So it's up to, say, in this case, Will and I, to develop similar features that users can find each other in their own ecosystems, and kind of see the same information, because otherwise it just could be confusion across the board. So that's how more or less how we see it.
That's really interesting. And it's just really impressive to think about how quickly you've gone from like zero users to like tens of thousands. And, that's something that I think still today, it can be years. Some app developers never even get to that stage, right? It, like the fact that you guys have been able to do that in the span of days or weeks, or depending on which Nostr app we're talking about, is like uh, that's really impressive. And I want to hear more about some of the challenges that have come along with that rocket ship growth. Like, surely you must have woken up one day and gone like, oh my god, this is like really, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be, right? Like I think it shocked everyone to see how quickly Nostr has developed. What are some of the challenges that you've faced in the meantime, trying to keep the app working and scale and accommodate all the needs of these new users?
So the rocket ship is real, right? And it happens mostly because of the server side infrastructure that is out there. So because Nostr is out there, because relays were out there, because Deimos was out there at the time when we started, Astro Ninja was the main UI for Nostr for web. So like you already had that user base. You already had people talking, you had people collaborating and sharing their information in the platform. All I needed to do was to enable another group of users to come into the ecosystem, which is the Android users, which at the time we didn't really have a good app for it. Um, and because that was everything was just ready for it. It amplifies the rocket ship behavior, and hopefully everybody else can also see all the relays and all the other apps out there can also see that we also helped bring their rocket ship into a higher pace because we're bringing more Android users, and that is the benefit to working with like one open platform like Nostr is. We didn't. If you want to make an app, just make an app. You don't need to ask Twitter for their information. You don't need to be bound by any particular rules of another player in the game. If you don't like a relay, you can always go to another relay. You can always put the relay yourself. um, so for app developers that just want to do create their own interfaces for what they imagine is the best user experience for their users, this is just perfect because you have the ecosystem. Everybody is there or still there, and you can just piggyback into that growth. So I certainly recommend. So if you're building, like if I had to build a full Twitter company, like it would take forever to get the network effects that Nostr is kind of providing everybody for free, right? Like we're never going to get 50,000 users if we had our own servers, our own app. Then we had to code an iOS app, then we had to code a web app, and make sure everything works well with one set of servers that we control. And now we have to think about how to distribute those servers worldwide and so on. None of those things needed to happen for the development of Amethyst. It was already there. So I certainly recommend other builders to just, which I do think will happen now more than ever, is we are going to start seeing um, um, applications that are outside the social media um, scope, such as the one I'm trying to build now, which is a medical device or a medical information app using Nostr as a backbone. So, transmitting social information is usually public, so you don't really need to concern too much about privacy there. But once you add a medical information app, now privacy is key, right? So now, like you have, how do you use the system in the ways that it would allow for that private information, that sensitive information to be out there, and without breaking the system, of course, and without but reusing the same user accounts that you have, the same information that you have, the same types of structures of messages. So how cool would it be if you and your doctor were in the same relay, and you could communicate directly with your doctor through private messages. The doctor could send prescriptions through a relay and back to the phone that you could see. You could reply, you could like, you could open it up, you can share it with other folks. Until that point, was just private. You can allow other people to come in and see your medical records. Going back to the discussion about the COVID QR codes, healthcare right now is fully centralized, either in the US in terms of companies owning all of our data. We don't know how many times they transfer our data behind our backs. Or it's in some countries like Brazil, India, and Canada, it's owned by the government, right? So you have either a centralizing power in the public entity or in the private entity, but in the end, in both cases, there is no way the user knows what's happening from that system. If you bring that into Nostr, now suddenly all your medical information could be in relays, and the user can share to other relays or can encrypt it different ways, can take it away and provide that data to, say, another startup that is processing medical information to come up with interesting information to users. Why not? You don't need to ask that permission again to the hospital system, say, to download your entire medical record from their servers and just send it to somebody else. And this is what Nostr allows. It kind of breaks the centralizing power of those private servers out there. Let's hope that from now on, because we have the system, because we have all the apps already available and more coming, there will be very different applications using the same protocol being built upon. So, applications like Amethyst can also piggyback on them and kind of help each other grow and hopefully decentralize sub ecosystems that already are too controlling for their own good.